Hello, everyone. Welcome to Three Bone Theater's YouTube channel. My name is Tiffany Bryant-Jackson. I'm the education manager, and we're here to talk about our next production. Today, we have one of our co-directors in the house, as well as our operations and artistic director, Robin. We're going to talk about Mojada, a Medea in Los Angeles, how it's made its way to Three Bone, and how it's been so far in the hands of Michelle and Carlos directing the show. So I'm going to do what I always do, which is start with Robin and ask you, in the reading, what made us look at this show and get it in our season?
Yeah, so I mean, we're always looking at ways to represent the community in Charlotte. And Charlotte has one of the fastest growing Latinx populations in the country, and just a really, really rich culture here. And so we wanted to make sure that our programming reflected that. And we're really excited. We announced this recently, but we wanted to make sure that this wasn't also just a one-off engagement. And we're really excited to commit to producing the whole trilogy by Luis Alfaro, who's one of the most prominent Chicano playwrights ever. He's amazing, and he's adapted three Greek tragedies through the lens of a modern day Chicano experience. And so this is our first in the trilogy, and we're so excited to continue to build those relationships in the community here, to tell these stories, and also to provide the opportunity for Latino actors and artists to get involved, because there's not a whole lot of that in kind of the main stages of Charlotte here. And so being able to also engage those artists and learn from them and get their feedback has been really critical.
I love it. I'm a sucker for an adaptation of what other people deem classic. That's another conversation on what I deem classic, but I love a good adaptation. And I love it when we bring it into modern times to relevant communities and what's happening now. Michelle, I'd love to hear about your reaction when you first heard the show was coming, and then when you first got a chance to read the script, knowing you were going to have some part in shaping this show.
Of course, yeah. I remember actually around this time last year, Robin and I both graduated from the same university a bit a bit of time apart. And you guys had just announced your season whenever I sat down to have kind of like a one-on-one just to talk about theater in Charlotte. And it just meant so much to me to hear that the only contemporary adult professional company in Charlotte was doing a show that was for our community and told the story of our community. Because I think that a lot of Latinx artists in Charlotte, they're so deeply woven into, especially the theater community here, but we just don't feel like our stories really get told. And it's something that we bring our experiences into the rehearsal room always, especially those of us that come from immigrant backgrounds or immigrant roots, that it can feel sometimes like you're being asked to come into a rehearsal space and leave a part of yourself behind in order to adopt your Americanness. So whenever I first heard that Three Bone was producing the show, I said, oh my God, what a great opportunity for, a group of Latinx artists to be in the same space and tell a story that really is so common in the Charlotte community, but doesn't really get talked about, although it does get noticed. And then having read the script, I think I had a twofold reaction to it, because as a Latina, it meant so much to get to see how Lisa Alfaro has woven pieces of our identity and joy and light into this story, which is a tragedy, but there's still like places to find hope, and places where you just see yourself in the warmth of our culture and our community. So I definitely fell in love with that. And then as a woman, it's tough because the Medea story is one of horror. It's one of deep sadness and grief. And my immediate reaction was, I don't want people to leave thinking that Medea is the villain. I don't necessarily want them to love her either, but they need to feel neutral about her. And I think that I think audiences need to see her as a person. Before they see her as a woman, before they see her as an immigrant, she is a human being. So that was my immediate reaction to, this play that I loved the culture, but I also knew that it was a big responsibility to tell the story through an authentic female perspective, which inherently is an authentic human perspective. So yeah.
I love what you said about that, not necessarily the villain, but not necessarily, you know, well, not a hero. But that goes into who we are as humans every day. There are people who are vile, but there are people who are multifaceted with many layers. And how do we dig into those layers to see who they are? What makes them who they are? And I think we get some of that in this show. You know, is it your talent that makes you who you are? Is it where you're from that makes you who you are? What makes you the person you become at its core? And knowing that, you know, certain things can alter who you are and outcomes in a way that you cannot imagine, which is, you know, the whole tragedy. No one walks into that, the classic thinking, oh, this is great. No, it is a Greek tragedy. I like to remind people. But you did a good job talking about there is hope and light in this show also. How has it been bringing together this group? I know we are very intentional about who we bring in the room as far as artists and creatives. So how has it been in the rehearsal room with a group that isn't always together in such a collective?
Yeah, I will say immediately that it has been just such a joyous space. I think that for a lot of us, and I know certainly for me, it was the first time when I walked into our read through that I got to sit in a room with so many Latinx artists to tell a story that we were all familiar with. So it's been wonderful working on a show that is, again, so like deeply tragic and, politically concerning, but being able to have, we finish a scene and then afterwards we're able to talk about things about our culture, our experiences in America, our experiences as artists. So we've been able to find those pockets of light that are really lovely and been able to make really close connections with each other. That has been really wonderful. And then I think in like the actual storytelling process, I've just been so much more conscious about holding space for people's different experiences. We have a really great mix of not just Mexican immigrants, but immigrants from other Latin American countries. We have perspectives of people whose parents immigrated here, and they were born in the United States. So this is the world that they've always known. We have people who came, as children and grew up here. So that has been really interesting. People whose immigrant experiences have been in California, some who their experience has been in North Carolina, which is two completely polar opposite things. And we've just been very conscious of holding space that the way that maybe Carlos and I interpret immigration, which even we're so different from each other because our stories are different. But the way that the humanity and the stories that these artists bring into the space are just as valuable, and in fact have made a more three-dimensional, multifaceted process and storytelling process. So yeah, I think that has been really educational for me, learning how to be kind of one of the instigators for those conversations, but also whenever somebody is sharing something, to have full respect that that is their experience and that is their story, and that it has room and is welcome in the telling of Mojada.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
think
you.
just to add on to that, and uplift Carlos Alexis Cruz, who's co-directing with Michelle. Carlos, we've known each other for a long time. We've wanted him to direct with us for years. And so we were so excited. It's always a scheduling issue, which no one will be surprised about if you know Carlos. But it was, it was such a joy to have him sign on to this project, and then to also have just like a younger and female, perspective that's being brought from Michelle, I think is so valuable. I love that they are co-directing this and working together on it. And I think, when we're talking about the theme of this season, this is the last show of this season, that the theme has been identity. And so much of what we've been talking about for a year now is breaking down this myth of a monolith, right? That all immigrants have the same experience, that all Latinx people have the same experience, that all, the whole Black community has the same experience, the whole white community has the same experience. And so I think like being able to really show not only on stage, like how wrong that is, and how diverse and rich everybody's experiences are and individual, but also in the rehearsal rooms, like being able to bring together groups of artists who may have a similar demographic but have a really wide variety of life experiences, I think is just a really important exposure and reminder at the humanity within every single community. I think that that's just been such a joy this whole season to see that come to life.
I would agree. It's been, I want to say magical, but I think it is. It's magical for representation to happen in a space that it doesn't always happen. You know, we can go on for hours about theater in itself and how very hard it is to exist inside that world if you are a person of color and find space where you are represented, not only visually, but in the story itself. And then, you know, you narrow it down to even a smaller community of our city and our state and what that looks like. So I love that there's intention behind what is happening and there's room for growth and opening and lots of discussion in the room that's not just about the show, but about the artist experiences that they bring into the show. Before I get to my last question, this is my normal plug. I have to do it for every YouTube conversation. If you have not bought your tickets yet, I'm warning you to buy them now, because every single time I do a YouTube conversation and someone doesn't, without a doubt, someone will email or call on a sold out show day and ask a lot of questions. So you have time. We open the 9th of August. We go through the 24th. This is Tiffany giving you your warning. All right. This is my last question. I ask it with every conversation. What is one thing you want the audience to take away from their experience at the show? What do you want them to walk home with? I'll start with you, Michelle.
I ask myself that very question every time that I go into working on a show, because I think, what do I want to take out of this process? And I can say that I went into this process knowing this, but it has left me with an even higher awareness of, I want people to leave this show realizing that Medea is their neighbor. Medea is somebody that they see in a store or a restaurant, somebody that they see working, or on the street. Her story, as tragic and deeply complex as it is, exists every day. Her journey exists in people whose faces we see every single day. And if you leave this theater without it changing the way that you see immigrants and the Latinx community in general, I think you need to come back and watch it again, and just get more in touch with your humanity. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Robin.
I think just really quickly that, we are in an election, a presidential election year, that the issue of immigration is top of mind and top of parties' platforms. And that this is, if you needed a sign and you hadn't gotten one yet, this is your sign to advocate, to show up, to do everything in your power to help make sure that this country is welcoming and open and a realization of the values that we claim. We are made better because of the immigrant community. And I hope that everyone leaves understanding that.
I love it. I will tie both of it together for our friends who love that one book called the Bible. Remember that quote, love thy neighbor? In order to love thy neighbor, you have to know thy neighbor. That neighbor is different. That neighbor comes from different backgrounds and they have different experiences and stories. And in order for you to get into that, I want you to go home from the show and think about who is your neighbor. Also look at who's missing and why that's happening in your communities. But really I want you to home and pay attention to your community and who is around you and learn things about other people so you don't live in a bubble. That's my take on that. And then I want you to go look for other adapted mythologies and call me so we can talk about what makes a classic and what makes it not. That's Tiffany's talk. All right, thank you both for taking some time out of your day to come and talk to everyone just about the show and your experiences in the show coming to Charlotte. Again, it opens the 9th of August, closes the 24th. You have 3 weekends to make your way to the theater at the Arts Factory. I hope you come back. We'll be having a few more conversations And I hope you plug into all of them because this is going to be a good show. I know I'm biased. I'm always biased. But trust me, once again, get your tickets now. We'll see you at the theater.